Okay, can you let me know when you can see the slides?
Yes, we can see the slides.
Yep.
Okay, so what I'll do is, so I've named this this presentation Kareem and the Agile Mindset. But in a nutshell, I'll give a quick introduction about myself in a moment. But one of the main things that I really want to get across is, first of all, my journey within agility, how I ended up in Dubai with Kareem, and also the really focus on the Agile mindset, because I feel, coming from a Pakistani family myself, and traditionally I think from like the Asian subcontinent, a lot of people don't have the right mindset when it comes to agility. So, and you know, this is something I feel is really important. So let's go through the slides. So, quick introduction about myself. So my name's Rauf. I was born and bred in the UK. I'm currently at Kareem, but my journey actually started at TomTom. So when TomTom, who makes satellite navigation, were a startup, I actually joined them. And actually, my second day, I was in front of a Kanban board, and I did not know what was going on. They had this guy there who was a Scrum Master. And everyone was around the board, and they're pulling post-it notes, and I had no idea what was going on. And then they sent me on training, and that's when I really learned what agility was. And I think that was probably about 12 or 13 years ago. So I left TomTom, and then I went to work in consultancy with Accenture. And I worked with many clients with Accenture. Unilever was one of them. There was ABN AMRO, Royal Dutch Shell. The list goes on. And it was a mixture of traditional project management and agile methodologies. And then I was there, and then at that point, I got married. So I thought, I can't be traveling all around Europe and parts of Asia with Accenture anymore. So I decided to take up a contract in Qatar, in Doha, and it was on a digital transformation. So it was a company called Qatar. Well, it was a joint venture between Qatar Petroleum and ExxonMobil. And I was there for about 4.5 years, and I introduced Scrum and then the Agile Mindset to this oil and gas organization, which is probably one of my proudest moments, because I was working with people from Qatar whose mindset is further back than, like, I don't know, maybe in Bangladesh or places like that. The mindset was really, really backwards. I left there, and then I went back to the UK, and I was an independent consultant for Talk, and then the Co-op before I came to Kareem. I'll tell you a little bit more about how I get into Kareem in a moment, which will take us into agility. A little bit more about myself. Manchester United is my team. I still believe they're the best football team in the world, even though they struggle to win at the moment. I like playing football and cricket myself. Even though I was born and bred in the UK, I can't support England at cricket. And even though Pakistan are not really playing that well at the moment, I still support Pakistan. In my spare time, I like food, like most Pakistanis, and I like traveling as well. And this is a recent portrait of me and my family. So my wife and I have a young daughter, 5 years old. My LinkedIn is there at the bottom if anyone wishes to connect as well. So I've come to Kareem back to the Middle East after spending a good few years out of the region. And when I was in Qatar, and I left Qatar, I remember saying to my wife that I never want to work in the Gulf countries ever again. They don't understand agility. They're so backwards. It's very hierarchical. And then I was actually here on holiday, and then I got invited into the Kareem office where I met with like the founder and some other people within agility as well. And about 3-4 interviews later, it was I found myself trying to convince my wife that we have to leave the UK and move back to Dubai. But before I came to Dubai, I spoke to a friend of mine who worked for one of the big airline companies here, and I asked him about agility and Kareem, and he said to me that Kareem is one of the most agile organizations in this region. And I was quite impressed by that, because that's the impression that I got when I actually went into the office and I was speaking to people within the organization. However, when I landed here, things were a little bit different. So these are the so once upon a time they were renowned for the ways of working, the agility that they had, but due to exponential growth, they started to have gaps in the way that they'd like to work. Here are just some of the points that we saw gaps in. So we started working in silos. So communication wasn't that good. There wasn't much transparency, because we were almost, to a certain extent, looking at competitors and seeing some of their features. We started to like copy them, and we weren't really delivering the value that we thought we could. We started to grow in terms of engineers. So we had engineers in Karachi, we had engineers in Lahore, and these were with a third party. And then we opened up an office in Berlin as well. So cross collaboration and even collaboration within teams became very difficult. Sometimes we'd have a product manager in Berlin, and then we'd have engineers in Pakistan, and vice versa. Because we started to get more complex, we didn't really scale or understand how we could scale. We just started getting more people and trying to do the same thing. We didn't really have a model to scale on. In the end, we tried to implement the Spotify model, like everybody tries to do, but yeah, we had problems in that sense. And then best practices as well. We started to get people from different organizations, some who had agile experience and some who did not, and we started to dilute some of our best practices, so they were not evident anymore. And then because of that, this really affected the way that we delivered. Our deliveries were no longer predictable. Commitment to sprints and to the business were not being met. And then this caused a lack of alignment predominantly between product and engineering. So this was one of the main reasons that we said, okay, what we need to do now, we understand we have these problems as an organization. We need to embark on an agile transformation. So what are we trying to achieve? We're probably trying to achieve what most other organizations are trying to achieve in the next slide. And some organizations may better in some of these aspects to others to different degrees. So the main thing here, and if you look at the title of this slide, was we wanted to become agile rather than just do agile. We wanted to look at predictability. We wanted to understand what our backlog looked like, where we were going, so we had a roadmap, and we wanted to be able to deliver on our promises, on our sprints. Quality is something that we really took our eye off. So if we spoke to any of the engineers and we asked them, how's the quality of your squad? Not many of them knew. So we really needed to get more involved in who owns quality. Quality was always seen as if something goes to production, and if there's an issue, then there's a problem with quality. Whereas most of us probably know here on the call that quality actually starts right from the start. The whole team own quality, and there's different gates at quality as well. So we wanted to focus more on quality from ideation all the way through to implementation. So we talked about predictability. With predictability, then comes sustainability and hopefully some pace as well. But there's only value in being predictable and iterating quickly and being quick to market if the actual feature that you're trying to deliver to the market is the right product fit. What I mean by this is if your feature is going to deliver value to customers, that's the only thing that's going to be valuable. If you have something that if you're delivering features all the time, but customers are not using them, then this is going to be a problem for your organization. So alignment was another one. We started to see a division between product and engineering, and they were never really aligned. So with this agile transformation, then to get people to be agile rather than just do agile, we wanted to get alignment not only between product and engineering. We want to change the way our organization is structured so that we have finance, we have marketing, we have the people team, human resources all sat in these almost like startup little squads. So they understand what needs to be done, not cross-functionally. So not cross-functional teams, we want end-to-end teams. So teams that can deliver from actually ideation all the way through to getting the products out to the market. One of the reasons why we all do Scrum as an example is because of the iterations and having an early return on investment. When we started to grow, our release cycles became longer and longer, which meant that we didn't realize any return on investment and also feedback until maybe 2 or 3 sprints had gone, which almost kind of defied the point of having a 2-week sprint when we were only releasing every month and a half or even 2 months at times. And then the last point that we wanted to try and achieve was lowering costs. So we knew that the Uber acquisition was looming, and we knew that there'd be a lot of work in terms of making the organization more lean and more efficient. So lowering costs was one of the things that we really wanted to do. And then this is something that's not very easy to follow up on. And like I've said here, it's very hard to promise. But what we wanted to focus on was spending money on features that were more likely to generate revenue. So understanding why we're doing things before we're releasing them out to production. So I'm going to open up the floor now. You can type in the chat or you can speak out loud. So if you had to summarize Agile, what one word would you guys summarize Agile as?
You want people to
Flexibility.
write in the chat?
Okay, so we have flexibility. Okay, not a problem. What we will do, go to the next slide. So when we normally ask people what Agile is, people normally give one of the 3 answers. Sometimes they say it's a process, which I understand why people would think it's a process. If they look at it from a certain point of view. A methodology, I can understand that as well. And software development lifecycle. Predominantly, when we talk about Agile, people automatically assume Scrum or Kanban. And most of the time, these, especially Scrum is used in software development. So I can understand why people use this. But in essence, Agile is not really any one of these. Agile is a mindset. So when we talk about a mindset, we talk about how it's a way of being. How would you react? How you would react in a certain situation solely depends on the mindset you have. If you have an aggressive kind of mindset and someone makes you angry, you're probably going to get angry with them, maybe violent. If you're a very calm person, even if someone really, really tries to push your buttons, you're probably still going to remain calm. So Agile is a mindset. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk to you, and this is the core chunk of this talk now. I want to talk to you about the fixed and the growth mindset. I'm not sure if any of you guys have, or many of you guys have heard about the fixed and growth mindset. But almost think about it like, well, I know when I was in school, we used to get, sorry, I just asked, I've just seen your message and you're saying, is it a culture? I'm going to park this question because this is a really good point. And I'll relate back to this point once we get to the slide that I'm talking about, but thank you for that, Asma. So when we was in school, our lecturers used to say to us, oh, think outside the box, think outside the box. And it's almost like they used to put us inside a box. And this box was the same for everybody else that was in the class. And this box was the things that we've learned and the things that we do. On the flip side, if you look at the growth mindset, imagine not being in a box. Imagine that box being things that you're comfortable with the fixed mindset, but with the growth mindset, imagine not having a box at all. And imagine not having to think outside the box because your thoughts are already outside the box. You're not in a comfort zone. You're willing to challenge yourself. So the next couple of slides, this work's actually taken from a professor from Stanford University in the USA. And she's called Caroline Dweck. And I'd really recommend you guys look up on some of her work because she's done some really good stuff. So she's defined the fixed and the growth mindset. And each one of these mindsets, she's defined 5 points. So she's defined challenges, obstacles, effort, feedback, and success of others. This is just the first level. So think of this as the high level. So when we talk about the fixed mindset and when we talk about challenges, normally people, they're in this box and everything that's in that box, they're comfortable with. And if a challenge comes in, that's most of the time outside the box, they try and avoid it. Because the main thing here is because they see failure as a negative thing. And I'm sure most of you guys know in here as well as I do, that failure is not necessarily a negative thing because there's always learnings from failures. When we talk about obstacles, they always give up easily. They don't see perseverance as something that is a good characteristic. So they see obstacles, they just give up. When we talk about effort, they see this as useless, as fruitless. They don't see that.
Which window is on this?
Sorry, that was my wife, I apologize. So they see effort as fruitless. So when we talk about improving ourselves, if you think about riding a bike, for example, if you're on a bike, like I've never met anyone that can ride a bike the first time they sit on it. They actually have to practice and practice, and then they put effort in, and then they see the results. Feedback they see as being unnecessary, and they ignore it. They're uncomfortable receiving feedback from others. And then finally, the success of others, they feel threatened by others having success. One thing that I'll say here is when I was growing up, my father used to say to me, Rauf, if you make a mistake, that's fine, because I'm hoping you will learn from it, right? It's almost like fail and fail quick. But my dad, like 30 years ago, was telling me this. So if you make a mistake, don't worry about it, just learn from it. If you make a mistake again, then we need to have a chat because you didn't learn from the first time. And then he said, if you're a wise man, you will learn from failures or other people's failures. But this can also be applied to other people's successes. Why do people read books from, Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Elon Musk or even people like Imran Khan? These people are, they're successful people. So they want to try and understand from their learnings how they could be successful as well. If anyone has any questions, please put it in the chat or just interrupt. It's absolutely fine. So if we go on the flip side, we look at the growth mindset. And the growth mindset, this is like the more exploratory mindset. So for example, in the same 5 angles that we have on this, when we look at challenges are embraced. So it's almost like if you say to someone, oh, yeah, you can't do that. And some of the growth mindset, oh, yes, I can. I'm going to do this. Whereas some of the fixed mindsets will probably say, yeah, you're probably right. I can't do it. And they won't even try. Obstacles. So when people with the growth mindset come across obstacles, they persist. There may be setbacks, but they'll think, hang on, plan A didn't work. What's plan B? When we talk about effort, they see this as a path to mastery. So if you put the effort in, I'm sure most people have heard the saying that, practice makes perfect. And this is what I was taught when I was a kid, when I was a child. If you practice at something, I remember when I was doing my handwriting when I was younger, my father used to say to me, you need to keep practicing. And I kept practicing and I got better and better. So effort is a path to mastery. Feedback, I'm hoping everybody in the call here likes feedback. I love feedback personally. Feedback is a great way to learn almost without consequences, because it's somebody else's observation and it's constructive criticism, and they actually care about you to tell you so you can learn from that criticism. And feedback is amazing. It's one of the, like in terms of the mindset, it's one of the biggest things I would say. And then the success of others. So as I mentioned before when I was talking about the fixed mindset, they feel threatened by other people being successful. However, the people with a growth mindset, they have learnings from people who are successful. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly talk about this chap who's on screen as an example. So for those who don't know, this chap's called David Beckham. So David Beckham was, believe it or not, was never the most talented footballer. There's actually a documentary about him where his mother used to watch while she was washing the dishes. She used to look out the window and she used to see David Beckham trying to kick the ball up and keep the ball up, but he was useless. It kept dropping. But then that was his feedback loop. So the challenge that he had was that he wasn't the most naturally talented. So he embraced this challenge and he thought, I'm determined to be a footballer, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So the kick-ups that he was doing in his garden, so he had a football and he just kept kicking it without letting it touch the ground. He kept trying to do that. And even when he became a professional footballer, he was known as one of the best free kick takers in the world. And there's other footballers say that he used to practice the first person on the training field, the last person to leave. He always used to practice. And this is proof, living proof, that effort is a path to mastery. So feedback, how did he get feedback here? He probably got feedback from his coaches, from his friends, from his mother, but he also got feedback from when he tried to kick the ball up and stop it from hitting the ground, it hit the ground. So that would mean actually he failed, so he tried harder. And through effort, he became better at it. And again, when he was trying his free kicks, if he was missing the goal, if he was not scoring, this was instant feedback. It was quicker than anybody could give him feedback. And then he had other players around him, like Ryan Giggs and Paul Scholes, who are a lot more talented and they were a lot more successful. So he saw the success of them and he actually learned from them. So this is actually like a real life example of how somebody with a growth mindset can actually achieve almost like legendary status in their field just by the mindset.
I have one question.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. You shared growth mindset and fixed mindset, and you give an example of a highly motivated person who want to work in a growth mindset. But
yes.
We are dealing here with fixed mindset. So
yes.
Yeah, the next slide is like same topic.
Yeah. So
okay, I'll listen to it first.
yeah. No, it's fine. Thank you for speaking up, because that's feedback for me, right? So if I'm trying to get a message across to you, and maybe I'm not getting the message across, that you're giving me feedback, so I can, in the next session I can adjust it. So
yeah, maybe this slide should be before the example.
Yes, possibly, yes. Actually, that's possible. I'll actually make a note of that. Thank you. So so how can we go from the fixed to the growth mindset? We've identified, and this is not from a book. This is almost like from some discussions that I've had with other professionals, and we've talked about how can we move. And the first thing is you need to have awareness that there is a different way of thinking than the way that you've always thought. And you may have certain parts of your life where you're growth mindset, certain where you're fixed. But I'm pretty sure everybody has a mix of both. So the first thing is having that internal, identifying that you have that fixed mindset in, whether it's in the office, whether it's in your personal life, but actually being aware of it. The second part is we have these neural pathways. When we try to make a decision, we have our mind rewired in a particular way, but we need to change that internal dialogue. That's number 2. The third point is the actual action. So your action needs to support that new internal dialogue that you have. And I have some examples of how like you can start thinking about things differently in one of the coming slides. Actually, the next slide. So this is like changing the internal dialogue. So on the left, I've got, and it's probably self-explanatory, I've got the fixed mindset, and on the right, I've got the growth mindset. So instead of saying, I'm not good at this, you could say, actually, what am I missing? You know, it takes, you know, a number of skills to achieve this, but which one am I missing? Surely I'm not missing all of them. You know, I give up. Actually, you know, I'm not going to give up. Let me use a different strategy. You know, this is too hard. Actually, you know what? It's not that hard. It's going to take some time. I need to put some effort in this to try and help me master this. I made a mistake. Actually, mistakes help me learn. So as you can see, these are some of the internal dialogues that we can have. And when I've delivered this this session to other audiences, I've noticed that people have actually taken a screenshot of this and they've actually got a copy of it by their desks, because when they're going to reply to an email or if someone sends them a Slack message or even speaks to them, sometimes they'll look at this and say, actually, do you know what? I need to think of this in a growth mindset. So let me see if I can proactively start looking at the things on the right-hand side and response in that sense. Okay, so we talked about the internal dialogue. What are the actions to adopt a growth mindset? Again, this is from an article that's cited below, entrepreneur.com, and they state that there's 6 actual actions which can help you adopt a growth mindset. The first one is continual reading. So when I've delivered this in the past, some people have never heard about the growth and the fixed mindset. So they're oblivious to that there is an actual other way to think. So continual learning, I mentioned Caroline Dweck, she has some good articles, some good books. You can even Google stuff. So if you guys can start to learn more, and there's going to be people that can explain this so much better than I can. Even whether it's an article or whether it's a YouTube video or a podcast. So I really urge you guys to take that action. Perseverance. There's going to be times where you're going to find things a little bit difficult and you may react to a situation which you may identify as the fixed mindset. This is absolutely natural, but you need to persevere, acknowledge that that's the case, and keep trying. The third point was challenge yourself. There may be situations where you may feel uncomfortable. You need to get deep into that uncomfortable zone and you need to challenge yourself. So if there's, for example, if you're not comfortable making mistakes, one of the best ways that I've helped people in the past is write a blog about your mistake, but emphasize the learnings that you learned from that mistake and let people learn from your mistake. So you need to challenge yourself. I touched on it just a minute ago. Failure is not a bad thing. If we're going to fail, we want to fail quick. If we release a feature in a sprint and it takes us 2 weeks to do this feature and we release it to production and we fail, we've maybe lost 2 weeks. If we don't fail quick and we end up failing in, I don't know, the 6th or 8th sprint, we've lost a lot more and the learnings are a lot more costly. Fifth point is being open to feedback. There's something called impact feedback, which talks about how you can structure feedback to your peers, to your family, to your friends, in a way which is factual and is going to have impact for the person receiving it. So be open to feedback, but also learn how to give feedback. So if you guys have time, just Google impact feedback. That'd be really good. And the last point is celebrating others.
तो पैसे ले लिया ना उससे।
Sorry, guys, if you don't have a question, can you go on mute, please? Okay, so thank you. So if we talk about celebrating others, this is something that will really help you in learning from other people's success. So these are 6 points. You may want to take one for a couple of weeks. I wouldn't suggest taking them all at once. Small steps to help you make it more of a change and a long-lasting, sustainable change. Okay, so we talk about the agile mindset, and we've already said that it's the growth mindset. I had this slide in here, and it's about the Agile Manifesto. I'm actually going to skip this slide for this session because I'm just wary of the time as well. But what I'm going to talk about, because Asma, you mentioned about culture. I'm going to make an assumption here that you guys are aware of the Agile Manifesto and the Agile principles. So if you have a look here,
Yes.
we have the Agile mindset here. And the Agile mindset is the way of being. And what defines the mindset? The first thing I got here is culture. And this is what I asked her when she said, is it culture? This is why I said, hang on, we'll tackle this in a moment. So the culture, what defines culture in an organization or in a household? It's almost the attitude of the person, of the employees, or in a household, it may that be the attitude of individuals or even the children, and then the leadership styles or how your parents are or how your manager is. So attitude and leadership combine to create the culture. So this is the most important thing. If I can leave you guys with one thing today, it would be to urge you to read more about the Agile Mindset. And the reason why I say that is because the Agile Mindset is defined by values, which is the Agile Manifesto, and is guided by principles, which are the 12 Agile principles, and are manifested through a practice. That could be Scrum, it could be Holacracy, Kanban, Lean, whatever it may be, you call it what you want. If you have the mindset solidified, then you have some guidance here by the values and the principles. Whichever practice you do, you will be agile. You can call it whatever you want. If you've got the growth mindset, the agile mindset, you're guided by the principles and you have defined values, whatever practice you do, it will be agile. So this is quite a powerful slide. So what does this mean in real life? Because I've talked about theory quite a bit, and some of you guys might say, yeah, Rauf, you know, like this is all good in theory, but what does this look like in real life? So here this actual table what I've got here is a 2-week sprint. So if you look down the left, we've got day 1 to day 10. And then across the top, we've got the hours in the day. So what I've done here is, if you have a look at the blue bar here, this is 4 hours that we have for sprint planning. The orange bar here that I have coming down here is 15 minutes every day for stand-ups. And then the 2 blocks I've got here, the yellow is the review at the end of the sprint, and then the pink color is retrospectives. So I'm assuming that most people work 8 hours a day, which is 40 hours a week. And what I've done, I've actually done a calculation that this area here, which is either orange, blue, yellow, or pinky purple, is actually 8.5% of your sprint. Okay, so this is doing agile. So you're doing agile for less than 10% of your whole sprint. The rest of the time, which is over 90% of your time in a sprint, this is where being agile really shows you benefit. So this is what it actually looks like. So that growth mindset is all of this, but it really comes into play in this over 90%. An example of this would be if someone had a retrospective and they had action points. However, after the retro finished, they didn't really take the action points, and then the next retro comes and then they do the same thing. So there's not the action point. So this is an example of doing Agile, because you've done the ceremony, you've got action points from it. But in the green part here in the middle, where we talk about being Agile, when we action those action points from the retrospective in this example, that's how we be Agile. So a couple of more slides here before we go into questions and answers. So there's a study here. The link is below. And this study, I think they looked at the top 50 organizations that were renowned for agility. And they said, if you do Agile, so when I talk about doing Agile, I'm talking about that, let's say 10%, there's 20% benefit in doing Agile. So when we talk about doing Agile, we're saying that we do stand-ups, we've got sprints, we do retrospectives, we've got Kanban board, those kind of things. Some of the benefits that they saw was improved visibility. This makes sense because you'll have a Kanban board on the wall and people can see what's going on. Communication, this makes sense as well because you have your stand-ups every day, so communication is increased. Productivity increased, and then some ability to adapt to change. So we started to have 2-week sprints. At the end of every 2-week sprints, you understand whether the direction you're going is right or not. If it's not, then you can pivot. Okay, so all this amounted to 20% benefit. On the flip side, being Agile had an over 200% benefit. Can you imagine that? Over 200% benefit in being Agile. And this was having an Agile mindset. Predominantly having the Agile mindset is what caused this change. Some of the benefits that we're seeing were employee engagement, right? Anybody here who's an employee, they want to be engaged with the organization, with the work that they're doing. If they're not engaged, it just becomes mundane. They're not going to push themselves. They're not really interested. Leadership at all levels, having autonomous teams. So letting people make decisions and letting them lead on those decisions. Delighting customers. So this is like delivering value and delivering quality. Customers and delivering the right product fit. This is the customer delight. And then continuous learning. So instead of just having that action point in the retrospective and then it not being actioned, they were actually actioning those action points and they were learning from that. And the team was improving in terms of productivity, efficiency. As a team in itself, they were thriving. So doing Agile is not being Agile. That's one of the key takeaways here. And this, I'm sure most of you guys know the guy in the bottom right, Jeff Patton. He's an Agile evangelist. And he came up with this statement. And he said, doing Agile satisfies management. However, being Agile defines Agile culture. This is such a powerful statement. I'll give you an example. So I report directly to the SVP in the organization in Cream where I work. And I was asked once, Rauf, I want the teams to be doing stand-ups, are they doing retrospectives? And it's all about doing. And to be honest, if I got them all doing stand-ups and having retrospectives and planning, like management would be satisfied. However, that would not change the culture. It would not change the mindset. Being Agile, having that growth mindset is what actually defines the culture. I've been talking for about 40 to 45 minutes now. That's the end of the slides. I'll now open the floor up to any questions.
Thank you for such wonderful learning opportunity. I've learned especially the example of being Agile and doing Agile, not doing retros, and then you're not able to implement those retros. It's being Agile. It's a very good example.
Thank you.
Yeah.
May I have a question?
Of course, yes.
First of all, thank you for again actually enlightening us the difference between doing and being agile. Actually, this is one of the biggest concerns and problems of the people who try to implement agile in an organization. And as you have so rightly put it, that doing agile satisfies the management. What are the first three things that we need to do if we want to implement being agile? That is, bring in the change, bring in the cultural change, so that so that the teams are self organizing, self management, really implement the culture. Like in my company, I've realized that we are actually doing agile, but we are not actually being agile. Our management is still thinking on rewarding individuals rather than rewarding the teams, which is the which is real essence of agile culture. So what are the three things that we need to do if we want to bring in being agile culture in a company or to management team?
Okay, so man, that's first of all, I'm happy with what you're saying. It's really it's actually put a smile on my face that you understand this, and it's a very difficult question to answer because as agile coaches, there may be different dysfunctions of teams which are causing teams not to be agile. But what I would say is, with any change, first of all, you need to make the change within yourself. When people see that change within yourself, so if you can start to foster the growth mindset, people will see that positive change and they're more likely to learn from an example rather than being told. But if you have agile coaches in your organization, they'll be able to help you with this mindset shift.
Right.
Yeah.
How can we bring in that culture? Like I have tried to do all those things myself, implement the tool, and actually talk to people rather than just implementing the tool. But I guess there are some
I think we lost him there.
Yeah, I think Asma, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I have been working with an organization, and I've been working as a product owner here, and then later I've started studying about agile. Since our organization has decided to move on towards lean, and the reason being because what happens is within an organization, when people do not understand being agile and they just start doing agile, and then they start practicing few of the rituals and meetings that are stated in Scrum, a Scrum book, a Scrum guide, and we kind of start practicing this Scrum fall, and we do not really focus on the mindset and building that culture, because I believe that agile culture, since agile is a culture and it is not a resolution, it's an evolution, and it needs time to and of course it should be passed from leaders to the rest of the organization. And now, you also must have read about the modern agile these days, but the principles of the modern agile is quite similar to the agile, and why they have introduced modern agile is the reason that we did not understood agile's true spirit, and we have went into kind of Scrum fall. So it was quite a waterfall mindset with smaller, sprint sizes.
Sorry, Asma, I didn't quite get your question in the end.
I actually do not have any question, but I am just saying that uh, I think that we are failing here with Agile when we do not focus on changing the mindset and we focus on just doing Agile.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't. So when Zishan asked me if I could come here and speak to you guys, the mindset, because I come from a Pakistani family and I understand how we think, and I think like I was saying just before this, I think we really need to excel and change the way our mindset works, and that's why I chose this topic. Just like very quickly, when I worked in and it's not just Pakistan, and the reason I'll tell you why, because when I was with Accenture, we had a delivery center in Pune in India and in the Philippines, Manila, and we used to ask them to do some tasks for us, and it was almost like if you like, I'm going to simplify it for the just as an example. If I asked them for 3 pears or 3 apples, they came back and they brought 3 bananas. But when I asked them for 3 apples, they said, yes, we understand, right? But then we got behavioral specialists in to try and understand what was going on. And when we're brought up, especially in the East, we're almost told that hierarchy deserves respect. Like I was always told with my parents, respect your elders. Okay, so respect your elders regardless of what have you. And I still believe we should, but your lecturer, don't question him. Just whatever he says is right. But as I was brought up in the UK and I got involved in their culture, our lecturer would tell us something, and then we'd try and trip him up. We'd try and catch him out, try and make him make a mistake. We was already thinking outside the box. And they said it was a cultural thing. So instead of like your manager doesn't always know best, this hierarchy thing, like you said, when we talk about Agile and how it's not working and how we're just doing Agile, and someone mentioned about rewarding individuals rather than teams, all this kind of stuff is all a fixed mindset. So I'm glad that the audience here acknowledged that this is something that we really need to work on.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, any further questions?
I think this was already addressed, but I just want to know again how we can infuse these features in our teams to be self-organizing and like self-determining what self-managing team and self-organizing team. How we can do it with team? Like people here, they don't want to take ownership or they don't want to like work in these parameters. Like if we say them, you can do it, you have open environment, but still they do have some fear. Although the environment is very open, still they are not
Yeah.
able to come out of this older mindset. They still have some fear. I've seen it first-handedly. Like the environment is really nice, but people, they do fear. I don't know why. Maybe they still think back in the mind that they will be punished or something like that. How we
Yeah.
can, like some exercise or some tool, what you recommend for us to do?
I want to add this question. Sorry, I think it was my friend Junaid who was speaking. So just like he mentioned that how actually we can coach or guide your team on self-organization, especially in a being agile, which is almost 92%. Just like you give an example that that in retrospective meeting we point out some issues, but when we put that in the sprint backlog, but even at that time actually, so it is just actually part of the sprint backlog as a story, and no one is actually then taking care of that. No one is actually working on those recommendations that we have find out in our respective meeting. No one is actually trying to improve their actually associated areas are the main point that actually we have identified. So how actually, just like I second Junaid's point, that how actually we can self-organize, or how we can actually coach them, and even sometime as a agile coach or as a scrum master, so we get frustrated, and because there is no results on these things. So how actually we can self-organize team member, or how we can coach.
So Shane and Junaid, thanks for the question. So similar to the question that we had earlier from Salman about when he asked about the top 3 things. So you got like Khurram on the call, and also Zishan as well. The 3 of us are agile coaches. There's no silver bullet that fits every team. We need to understand the team. There may be some dysfunctions, and then you take an approach accordingly. It's not like a framework that we can just go and put on someone and then they'll change their mindset. And I'll just give you an example, because I think Junaid mentioned about people being scared to fail, or maybe there's a blame culture. So last December we had one of our young engineers, Adnan. He's from Lahore actually, but he's moved here to Dubai. He actually released a fix to production. However, he didn't monitor that fix. So once the fix went in, it worked, but it wasn't scalable. So then it broke again. And then we didn't realize it was broken until we saw a drop-off of customers signing up. So once we did an investigation, we realized that the fix went into production, it wasn't monitored, and it should have been monitored, and the fix was not scalable and what have you. He was very upset. But again, and I think I mentioned it before, what I encouraged him to do was, initially I said, just for yourself, just write about what happened. Just like a little log to say, this is what the problem was, this is how I tried to fix it, this is what happened when the fix went in, and this is what I could have done. If I was to do it again, I would have some monitoring set up. When he did that, we spoke about it, and then I encouraged him to write a blog on the company's intranet. And after some encouragement, he actually wrote a blog on the intranet, and he labeled it lessons learned. So everybody in the organization knew about this failure. However, he embraced it, and he said, fair enough, I made a mistake. Like I don't know anyone in my life who's never not made a mistake. So he said, I made a mistake. This is what I did. This is how I thought I'd fix it. And if I was to do it again, I would put these 3 steps in place as well to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I hope other people can read this, and when they put a fix into production, then they have some monitoring in place, and they make sure it's scalable and what have you. So when he did that, he got a lot of positive feedback saying, we were going to do a hot fix, and I've seen some of your points, and we didn't consider 2 of those 3 points. And we've just done that. And kudos to you, because otherwise we would have made the same failure. So it depends on the organization. It depends on the squad. It depends on the individuals, the makeup of the team, and how much psychological safety there is. There's a level of emotional intelligence that's required as well to help deal with this. So I'm really sorry, Junaid, Salman, Shaheen, all 3 of you asked, how can we start making these changes? The only advice that I can give, without knowing your teams and knowing your environment and what have you, is just to try and adopt the growth mindset yourself and let people learn and from your way of being going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have very nicely given us the example of using failure as a way to encourage people. I never had that idea before. So yes, this failure example would help me a lot.